Thank you for joining today. My name is Jake Pickin, and I'm the Director of Marketing here at Smooth Fusion. The title of this presentation is Are You Prepared for the Future of Search? So we've been a Sitefinity partner for more than a decade. And just a little fun fact is we celebrated our 20th anniversary as a company this year, which it was really interesting to kind of look back from when we started, and how the technology landscape has really changed since then. And that kind of sets us up for this presentation and what we'll be diving into first. Now, just as I mentioned about us as a company looking back in time, that's how we're going to start, is by thinking back 20 years ago. So here is a screenshot of what Google search results look like from 2001. As you can see here, the search is iPod, and nothing comes up because iPod wasn't released yet. So another search engine that you may be familiar with is Alta Vista and Ask Jeeves. Here's kind of those early days of what Google search results look like. You also had the advanced search option, which I remember using quite a bit. This allowed you to kind of narrow down your search results, especially if you really couldn't find what you were looking for on that first or second page of Google of the search results. You could go into the advanced search option and find what you needed, which was at that time a really cool feature for Google. But now they don't need it anymore because their algorithms are so sophisticated and so much smarter than they were back then. So Google presents results in different ways, like in featured snippets, maps, images, videos, stories, the knowledge graph, rich lists, direct results. All of these features would be shown on results depending on the search query that you do. So I'm sure all of you have seen these features and how search results look today. Now, some might argue that Google is the most dominant tech company to ever exist. And some of those reasons would be because they have over 90% of the search market. And this is as of February 2021. And also, they've had an over 2,000% increase in search traffic in the last 20 years. And what other company or brand can say that they were added in the dictionary as a verb? So I don't think I need to tell you which line is Google on this graph, but you can see how much their market share has grown and how stagnant the competitors have been. So why has Google become so dominant? One of the first things is their entire business model from the very beginning was focused on providing the best user experience possible. And they did this by responding as technology and customer demand has changed. But many times they've been way ahead of everyone else. And think about it. They've even influenced marketing and business strategies of some of the largest corporations in the world. So how have they made their search engine the best possible for their users? The biggest thing that Google has done over the years is algorithm updates. Now, Google has made hundreds of thousands of updates to their algorithm over the years. Some of these have been small changes, some of them have been major changes that have really dramatically impacted search rankings. And if you're familiar with the names of Google's updates over the years, then you'll understand why I have these graphics on the slide. But first, let's talk about a few of these. So Panda was an algorithm update released in 2011, and it aimed to lower the rank of lower quality sites. Penguin was released in 2012, and that penalized sites that went against Google's webmaster guidelines. And that was specifically sites that used black hat link building tactics, like your link schemes that were created to purposely to manipulate the search results. And RankBrain was another update, and that introduced machine learning capabilities to the core algorithm. Hummingbird update was released somewhere in 2013. It was less of an update and more of a complete overhaul of the algorithm. It was a much more sophisticated algorithm that sought to understand user intent behind search queries. Now, if you're a marketer and SEO falls under your job responsibilities, then you definitely understand the tension between trying to get your website to rank high on Google, but also, feeling the tension when Google constantly is making changes to their algorithm. So, for many marketers, it can be frustrating. And so that begs the question, how do you keep up? And what we're going to do is we're going to boil it down to one thing. And that's the aim to provide the best user experience possible on your website. And part of that is constantly asking the question, do my customers get frustrated when they visit my website? Or are they delighted by their experience? So user experience used to be something nice to add to your site, but definitely over the years it's become a focus of websites, from design all the way to development. And now, if you want to rank higher than your competitors, then it is something you need to continue focusing on. So at the end of 2020, Google announced that it was making changes to its algorithm to consider the experience someone has when they visit your website. So I'm not going to go into full detail in this presentation because there's a lot to it. But the main focus of this update that they announced in late 2020 was the focus of speed and user experience, hence why they call it Page Experience Update. Now, in addition to the Page Experience Update, Google also announced a June 2021 which already rolled out the beginning of this month. But they also announced that there was going to be another update coming in July. Now, there hasn't been much information on both of these updates. Now, if you've already been making user experience a priority for your website, then you're in pretty good shape. So really just continue doing that, continue doing what you're doing. So if you haven't made it a priority, you're going to want to start to optimize your website. And here we're going to go through a few of those ways that you can improve user experience. So how to provide the best user experience? Well, the first thing that we're going to talk about is optimizing your site for speed. Then we're going to go into personalizing the experience, providing interactive experiences, optimizing for mobile, and ensuring your website is technically sound. So the first thing is speed. Here's some info on page load speed. That's pretty interesting. You may have seen it before, but you want your pages to load in 1 second, and that's to provide the best experience. And that's no different for whether it's desktop or mobile. Now, once you start getting, after 3 seconds, the probability of a bounce increases. After 5 seconds, it's almost certain that your site visitors are going to bounce. And then once you start getting more into the 6 or over 10 seconds, you have some serious issues with your site that you really need to, test your site. You need to, if your bounce rates are really high on a page, this could be the reason why. So make sure you're constantly looking at these pages, looking at your data, and make sure you're taking those appropriate steps to increase the speed of your site. So to optimize the speed of your site, you need to be, number one, continually monitoring the performance of your website. But there's also performance optimization best practices. And I got these directly from the Sitefinity documentation. So I have that link below that you can go to, and you can see these in more detail. So some of these include caching, CDN, hosting, optimizing critical CSS, lazy load images, next-gen formats, resize images, efficient static cache policy. So the next thing is personalizing the experience for your site visitors. So here are some stats that I'm sure that you've seen before, or at least something similar to them, but The first one, 80% of consumers are more likely to purchase from a brand that provides personalized experiences. 74% of customers feel frustrated when website content is not personalized. 91% of customers say they are more likely to shop with brands that provide offers and recommendations that are relevant to them. And this one is important. 83% of consumers are willing to share their data to create a more personalized experience. This data speaks for itself. The bottom line is consumers want personalization. So how to personalize the experience? Deliver personalized content for users. This is the first and probably simplest way to personalize. For example, if you're a bank and you have data on a user and they fall into a target audience of maybe a young professional, then maybe you're going to want them to see mortgage offerings or credit card information when they land on your site. So it's important as marketers that when we think about personalization, we're switching the mentality from we will give our audience what we think they want, which is your traditional marketing, to we will give them what they want. Like, we have the data, we know the journey that they take, we have the data to back it up. We can give them what they want through personalization. So the best way to do this is by getting a software like Sitefinity Insight, where you can see the customer journey, where you can set up touch points, you can set up lead scoring. So ultimately, you can target these individuals. Then the other thing would be to ensure you're merging your customer data across systems. So especially as third-party data is going to be more difficult to access and to utilize in the next few years, it's really important that you start to build out your first-party data strategy. And this is collecting, connecting Sitefinity forms to your CRM and making sure your CRM and your CMS are in sync. So the next thing is adding more interactive elements to your website. So it doesn't have to be super flashy. Even those little things really help with the overall experience that your visitors have. So, this is just a little example, but you can see how, as you're scrolling down the page, some of these elements are setting in place. And, you can also see how you have this little underline comes in under the U.S. farmers. It's just these little things that really help your website stand out. So some other ways to make your site interactive is by adding things like infographics. So it's not your traditional infographic. This is a type of interactive infographic. So displaying information on your site that also your users can interact with. So, we could have done a static image with this, but for one of our clients, we made it interactive. Once you click on certain items in the shopping cart, they populate on the side there, and then it's also calculating the total number of farms in the U.S. that are impacted. So another thing is animations, quizzes, calculators. You typically see these calculators for especially the companies that are in the financial industry. But even things like surveys are great ways to get feedback from your customers. Now, the next thing is to optimize for mobile. Now, I'm sure you've been doing this for quite a few years now, but mobile usage continues to rise. So it's important that as we're talking about preparing for the future of search, you continue to put an emphasis on your mobile web strategy. So there's also a lot of tools to test the performance of your site on mobile. So, and just as a little, I don't know if it's a hint or a tip, but typically the most common issue when it comes to poor mobile experiences is poorly optimized images. So a good place to start would be looking at your images, look at the size of the images, make sure you're optimizing them Make sure they're not huge images that take a long time to load. Mobile's different than desktop, so you can't really treat them the same. So the final way to optimize user experience is to make sure your website is technically sound. Now this takes into account all the previous points that I made, but part of ensuring that your website is technically sound is getting a technical SEO audit. If you haven't done this before, you should definitely consider doing it. Now what it does is it looks at all the technical components of your site, and especially the components that impact search rankings. So it would uncover site issues that you're having. If you're using a really good tool, it will provide guidance on fixing those issues. So here I've also added in some tools that will help you optimize your website, in addition to some tools that I've mentioned earlier in the presentation. But the first one is Page Speed Insights. So this will give you a breakdown of page speed, but it also goes into Core Web Vitals, which is a big part of the new page experience update that Google is releasing this year. So the next one is Chrome DevTools. So this will help you dig into a lot of the technical components of your site. Obviously, it's called DevTools, and that's for a reason, because if you don't understand a lot of the technical details of your site, then this may not be a tool for you. But if you have a developer, this is a good tool to diagnose some of these issues, to diagnose some of the technical aspects of your site. So the next one is Search Console, and this is used to check indexing status of pages on your site. So it'll tell you if your pages are being indexed, or if they're not, if there's issues that are causing them not to be indexed. That's something that is extremely important. Obviously, if your pages aren't being indexed, then they're not being found on Google. So definitely check out Search Console. It's something you should be using on a weekly basis at least. But Search Console also will looks at the visibility of those pages in search. So it's a really good diagnostic tool. Next is Web Vitals Chrome extension. So this is another great tool and allows you to quickly check the core web vitals of a page you're on. HubSpot Website Grader is another tool that I use a lot. So essentially it gives your website a grade. Similar to Page Speed Insights, it looks at performance indicators. It looks at things like, how fast your page loads. Looks at the images. Looks for opportunities to optimize images and other components of your page. So definitely go ahead and look at that. I'm pretty sure HubSpot Website Grader gives you a mobile grade, and it gives you a desktop grade, and that's the same thing with Page Speed Insights. It's going to give you a grade for both mobile and desktop. And I don't have a specific tool listed, but having a tool that allows you to monitor your entire infrastructure is very important when it comes to optimizing the performance of your site. So that is the end of my presentation. I hope you learned a thing or two, and if you have any questions, I'll be sticking around to answer those. But thank you for listening in.